It's time now for Country and Western Spotlight, featuring Rocky Stone and the KTEN Ranch Hands. Presented by Hudson's Furniture at 713 West Main in Ada, and by Ben Steen's Bayless Drugs at 116 East Main.
Thanks a whole bunch for being with us for Country Spotlight for this Friday evening. We've got a real nice crowd out here in our studio tonight. We want to thank them all for being with us, and we think we've got 30 minutes of good fun and music lined up for you. If you're wondering why we're all so happy tonight, I'll just tell you right now that the thing that makes people in television happier than anything in the world besides money is ratings. And in a sense, ratings is money. Well, we got our ratings back today, and we find out that in the past 6 months period, we have doubled our ratings from a 6 month period ago. And we had a good rating then, fellas. Thank you.
In the early 1950s, radio was still king across most of the country, but an exciting new technology was quickly emerging. In 1949, WKY-TV Channel 4 signed on in Oklahoma City, becoming the state's first television station. While all Oklahomans were enjoying the new video signal, one Ada family was watching with particular interest.
This all started because Dr. C.C. Morris, the pastor at the First Baptist Church in Ada for a long time, he had built KADA, which went up in 34. So now it's 20 years later, and they wanted to get into television. And his son-in-law, Bill Hoover, was to be the general manager and really run the whole thing and get it set up.
With the help of Dr. Morris, Hoover established the Eastern Oklahoma Television Authority, purchasing land north of Ada and petitioning the FCC for a license under the call letters KEO, short for Covering Eastern Oklahoma.
So he just got energized around 1950 after Channel 4 came on the air. And he just worked his head off getting a television station here. And he and Dr. Morris and Brown Morris put what funds they could get together to start a stock company. And they went out and sold stock until they had sold enough stock to buy the equipment to put the television station on. It was quite an effort.
Well, I actually started at KADA, which was the affiliated radio station, in 1943. Then we started planning the TV station in the early 50s, and we're just about ready to start it when a protest was filed by the Ardmore newspaper, and we were originally assigned Channel 12. Because of that protest, it took us a year to get that all cleared out and assigned Channel 10.
Once those early licensing struggles had been overcome, Hoover was set to throw the switch on his new megawatt transmitter. With virtually no regular programming and unsure of exactly how many homes his signal would reach, Hoover took KTEN live on June 1st, 1954.
Channel 4 was the only station in Oklahoma City, and that's what you watched. So the weather conditions, it wasn't Ada's far enough away that you had to have a 20, 30-foot antenna outside your house to get it. And then here comes KTEN, boom, with this gorgeous, powerful signal in the area of Ada. I'll always remember that first night. And I was watching on the TV in May of '54. Two things I remember that night. I remember the first commercial. It was a 10-second commercial for Maryland Club Coffee. And then the first program they aired after the little welcoming ceremonies was the movie Stagecoach with John Wayne.
Primarily because of a lack of interference from other stations, KTEN signal reached across all of southeastern Oklahoma and even into northern Texas. Almost overnight, KTEN captured a large audience from the countless small cities and towns that covered that part of the state.
It was kind of a unique thing because this was a maximum power station using the most powerful transmitter that RCA manufactured. But it turns out that our main audience was in southeastern Oklahoma.
People didn't have any problem getting KTEN in that area where they were always used to battling, being far away and snowy type pictures. So one of the guys told me back in those days, said, boy, that KTEN's so strong you can pick them up on a cook stove.
A strong signal meant many people were watching and waiting for information as well as entertainment. Creating the infrastructure to reach people in the comfort of their own homes was tough enough. Creating programs for them to watch was an entirely different kind of challenge.
Anything that was of local interest, if they went and talked to Bill Hoover, he'd get them on the air because we had to fill time with something. And many times it was very good programming.
We had a cooking show, we had a country and western band show, and we had news, and we had a children's show. The same thing that I think all early TV stations used to try to fill the time.
There were very few syndicated shows because television had not been around long enough for Hollywood to have a whole lot of syndicated stuff available to rent.
Local radio personality Z.D. Parker hosted the first regularly scheduled show on KTEN, titled Guest Room. It debuted the first day KTEN went on the air and was broadcast live at 4 o'clock each afternoon.
We didn't have network service like we have now, and anybody that had the nerve had to get up and do a program because we had to have lots of programs. And so I'd had a program on KADA for a long time, so I'd had some experience, and I guess they thought I was a natural to go on live with another, with KTEN, just because they needed someone.
Guest Room would be the first of several popular local shows that helped to solidify KTEN's viewing audience. Soon, local talent started making its way to the studio, eager to perform before the cameras.
In the beginning, in '54, and this lasted a couple of years, they had a group of staff musicians. They were called the KTEN Ranch Hands, and it was on every day at 6:30 p.m.
I've enjoyed as much of this as I can stand.
George Miller headed up news, and Monty Bell did a show every day at noon called the Lake Texoma Report, and he'd call in on the telephone and check all those places on Lake Texoma, see how the fishing is.
One of the most popular local shows to air on KTEN in the early days was the Bar 10 Roundup, a live kids show that featured a cowboy, an outlaw, cartoons, and of course a group of excited children.
Rocky Stone, that was his stage name, Rocky and Cactus Jack. He said, "You'll be Cactus Jack," so that will be your stage name. So it'll be television name, so that's how I came with the name Cactus Jack. And so he said, "We'll just go ahead and dress up. I'll be Western, I'll wear the leather jacket and the whole works," and then said, "You'll go ahead and dress up like an outlaw." Rocky would holler out for Cactus Jack to come out. So I'd come behind the screen, and then what I would do is pop the bullwhip. And being a concrete floor out there, I would strike the ground with, or the floor with it, and it just give it a loud pop, which excited the kids because there was this mean hombre coming out from behind the curtains, and the kids just loved it.
Stone proved to be a natural entertainer and became involved with many early KTEN programming projects. He was instrumental in the success of another local show, this one featuring live country music.
We always like to include a religious number on our program, and this afternoon is no exception. We have a fine old standard with Gene and Betty, one that I'm sure you're going to enjoy, called Kneel at the Cross.
Rocky came up with the idea of us advertising and doing a weekly television show based on the Porter Wagner show.
If it takes a million tears to start a river, then tomorrow a new stream will flow.
We were always scared to death, except for Rocky. Now, Rocky was, he was always in front of a camera. But the rest of us were scared to death, and the guys would crawl down under the camera and roll up the entertainer's britches legs while he was singing a song or talking or something like that to make him laugh a little bit. And that always helped.
One thing all the local programs had in common was they were broadcast live as they occurred. This was before shows were pre-recorded. Mistakes were part of the routine. KTEN's employees grew from the experience, and the audience grew right along with them.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you about this famous air conditioner. It's really good for your home. Well, it's Dearborn. Doesn't look very sturdy to me. It has 12 speeds there. What's the window for? Well, it comes down very see. You get it? It comes down. It really works good, folks. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen. It comes down very well.
Yeah, well, almost. I don't think I'll buy that.
We'd have people around to suggest things to us, how we could make it better, how you could stand or sit or, things like that. We just helped each other, really. We didn't have professionals that helped us.
It was an experience because we really didn't know what we were doing. We had to learn on the job. As a pioneer, and trying something new and being young, it was all interesting and exciting and challenging.
KTEN Update News. A report of national and state news, weather, and sports brought to you as a service of the Channel 10 News Department.
Well, it was another unseasonably warm day today, but what I hear is that the weather forecast is subject to change. Ron?
You hear right, Ray. A cold front is moving across Oklahoma at this hour, and the weather is not going to be the same tomorrow. It's going to be much colder across.
We had a new news set we had tried out, and it had KTEN TV cut out of the front podium and had orange plastic in there, so we had a light that lit up. And I think we got to use it for about 3 or 4 days, but I remember one night on the 10 o'clock news, I just started, and I'm reading and looking at the camera. All of a sudden, I see the smoke coming up between me and the camera. What happened was the bulb had burned out. Somebody had put a much larger bulb, and it just melted the plastic KTEN.
It was so new that you tried things, and you had to be very creative in what you could do. And that was one thing I was glad to be there, because I was getting my education in broadcasting thanks to KTEN.
We were sitting on the front row, holding hands when the CinemaScope Technicolor feature began. But then she dropped my hand and started to stare.
Constant exposure on a high-powered TV station made some local on-air employees into lifelong celebrities.
It was one homecoming that East Central was having, and they was wanting someone to drive a team of horses. But I went through the parade, and from that point on, people got a real close-up of who I was, and then there wasn't no freedom afterward. You just didn't have freedom when you went to any event, basketball games, whatever. Once the kids find out who you were, you just might as well forget about watching the ball games.
Surprisingly, I still see a lot of people that say, I remember when you were on KTEN. Most of those are gone now, but I still occasionally hear that from people. But at that time, I guess probably everybody in town knew me, because we were certainly all glued to the TVs.
While local programs were popular, there still weren't enough of them to fill an entire schedule day after day. Hoover realized this from the very beginning and worked tirelessly to make KTEN a major network affiliate.
I can remember as a small kid in McAllister, KTEN coming on the air, and they didn't have much because ABC wouldn't offer them a network. They felt like that KTEN didn't have enough viewership.
And it was a real challenge in order to get the networks to even get interested in talking to us, because they were interested in the New York and Chicago and the Los Angeles and the Houston markets and things like that.
That was when ABC was just getting on the map with Dick Clark's American Bandstand, Mickey Mouse Club. Then here came Cheyenne, Maverick, Wyatt Earp, Rifleman, all those ABC shows that put that network on the map.
And I can remember seeing Bill Hoover on TV making a pitch for people to write letters in so he could go to ABC and get a network. And until then, they were just filling in with 30-minute films and stuff, not really a lot to watch.
Bill Hoover was a guy who could really walk and talk. Bill Hoover's brother-in-law, Brown Morris, used to call it Hoover's Folly, but it worked.
I remember he came back on several weeks later and had huge bags of letters, And he went to ABC and convinced ABC that there was enough viewership down there to warrant Channel 10 being an ABC affiliate.
Friends, I'd like to talk to you a little bit this afternoon about our home entertainment department, Hudson Furniture.
After becoming an ABC affiliate, KTEN really started to take off.
So for a better prescription service, give us a call.
Businesses throughout southeastern Oklahoma took notice and soon turned to KTEN as a way to advertise their products and services.
Well, on down to Hudson, that's where you get the best. We got lowest prices and better service, yeah.
Rocky came down after we taped our first show, and we had 30 living room groups on the floor, and he said, "You better get some ordered." Said, "We're going to run out of these." And I said, "Oh, we're all right." And we got down to 4 before we could get any back in. People really came into the store because of our advertising on Country Spotlight. And, had business all around Atoka and Durant and a little bit over in Texas and McAllister. Just about a 60, 70 mile radius.
Come on and see us, Hudson Furniture, 713 West Main, right here in Ada, where we'll always suit the terms to you and free delivery anywhere.
We started our television show June 26, 1963, and at the end of 1963, we'd almost doubled our business over 1962.
Hoover was quick to invest profits he made through advertising back into the station. Television was never a short-term amusement for him. On the contrary, his intention was for KTEN to be a leader in the industry for the long haul. Hoover's investments helped give KTEN an edge in a growing field of competitors.
Bill Hoover would remind us of this daily, that remember, these cameras and that transmitter and those microphones and that switcher and that audio console cost just as much in Ada, Oklahoma as they do in New York City. But New York City's charging $500 for a spot, and Ada, Oklahoma is charging $5.
Bill Hoover was the backbone of the operation, and he was a broadcast man, and he wanted things to be as good as they possibly could with the funds he had to work with, which were far less than the stations in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
The part that really impressed me about my father and our engineers is when those days came that we had to make that purchase. He didn't want to look at what was being sold right now. If I'm going to replace it, he said, then I want to look to the future. Let's not jump to what's being done here. Let's jump down the line. Let's be the guinea pig. We'll be more advanced with at least that one piece that we buy. And at the same time, he always felt like he could get a better deal by being a small station, because if they're using this piece of equipment in Ada, Oklahoma successfully, and they can afford to take a chance to do this, then the big markets, ought to just gobble this up.
In 1964, KTEN made its first major move. The broadcast tower remained north of Ada, but the studio moved into town on Arlington Street. The new studio was larger and more technologically advanced and increased KTEN's profile in the local business community, as well as in the political arena.
When any candidate came by, we would give them 30 minutes of free time, and I would interview them and be real nice to them. Then they would go down into southeastern Oklahoma and they'd do their campaigning, and these people down there would say, "Yeah, we saw you on TV." And it paid big dividends, because these people would then come back and invest their advertising dollar in KTEN, because they knew that we had the audience of southeastern Oklahoma, Little Dixie.
Here is a statement by Congressman Carl Albert.
I've known David Hall for a long time. He's one of the finest, cleanest, ablest men I have ever known. He was born and raised in Oklahoma. Go to the polls on November the 3rd and cast your vote for the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, David Hall.
We had a number of people who were running for governor or Congress or different offices would come through. As a matter of fact, remember when David Bourne was running for governor? He was from Seminole, and we did a lot of interviews on him.
Never got involved in politics in any way so far as my KTEN work was concerned. And it was a problem because we had the fairness doctrine in effect at that time. And so I had to be extremely careful.
Now, this is Mr. L.D. Tribble, is that right? You're with the Southwest Bell Telephone Company, live here in Kanawha. Now, where were you last night when this thing hit?
My main interest was in newscasts, and I just enjoyed it all. It was an experience because it really changed my life.
KTEN continued to grow its market share throughout the 1960s. In 1965, Hoover again saw the future of television and invested in a cable network. KTEN was also gaining a favorable reputation throughout the industry for developing exceptionally diverse talent.
There were many, many things that I was able to do or comprehend at more complex stations because I had the fundamentals that I picked up at KTEN. My first job at KTEN was being a studio camera operator. We also helped with the weather.
Across the nation, a storm center is building up in the northern Rocky Mountain states.
We had to manually turn the weather maps. They were the big wooden four-sided weather maps, and the camera operator, one was pointed at the weather person, and the other person went back there and turned the map, so it looked like really sophisticated stuff. The opportunities were there to learn about writing, shooting, video. At that time was black and white film, but you learned about that and had to solve your own problems. Sometimes we had to make our own stuff. It was a very creative, innovative place to be in the early days of television.
The great thing about working at KTEN in those days and all through the decades is because of the size of the staff and the situation and the programming, you got to do a little bit of everything. You had to. When bigger stations, they don't allow that. You're supposed to do that and don't go over there. But at KTEN, we got to do it all.
I went in to see Bill Hoover, and I told him I was really interested in TV and I wanted to do it as a career. And he said, that's great. And I said, so I'm going to switch from East Central and go to another school. And he said, why? And I said, so I can work in TV. He said, you're working in TV. I said, yeah, but I want to get a degree in TV so I can work in TV. And he said, why? I said, because I want to work in TV, I've got to have a degree. He said, no, you don't. There are people that come in this door every month with a degree and they want the job you've already got. Why do you want to leave? I said, okay, I'll stay.
Because FCC regulations had changed by the mid-1980s, Hoover's company was forced to divest of either KTEN or the cable system. It proved to be a grueling decision for him. His business acumen ultimately won out, and he kept the cable system, seeing in it the same promise he had seen in KTEN all those years earlier.
I've seen my dad cry one time. The day that he brought the staff in, when the sale was formal and finalized, he brought the staff in and straightforward Bill Hoover, you know, with a gleam in his eye and a promise to the staff that, you know, this was a good step for the company. It was a good step for them as an employee. Things were going to be not only all right, but things would get even better. I sat in that meeting with him, and when it was over, we both walked out of the building. I thinking he's just going back to his office and the day would be status quo day, you know, on with business. Instead of going to his office, he stepped outside, walked across the parking lot, which was quite strange, you know, for me the way he did it. And so I followed him outside. And he said to me, I'm not sure that you want to see me this way because you just saw me do one of the hardest things I've ever done in my entire life. He saw the better experience through cable. I think cable has proven its point. And so by law, we did what we had to do. And that was to divest the television station.
KTEN has changed hands a few times since that first sale, and now its studios reside in Denison, Texas. It's still a successful station with a viewing area that still covers southeastern Oklahoma and parts of northern Texas. But for some in the Ada community, particularly those who grew up with it, the heart of KTEN is long gone.
I think the things that we were able to do for the community, when the community needed something, it was very easy to get access to television. And television does have a great influence on what happens. And anybody that really needed help or something like that, we were able to do that. And I think local ownership really caused that, and I'm very proud of that.
It was prideful, the people of Ada, the business people of Ada, that had, we've got our own television station. Seminole, Shawnee, Holdenville, McAllister, they don't. So it was special.
Folks, that about wraps it up for this Country Spotlight. We certainly appreciate you tuning us in. Be sure and patronize our good sponsors, Ben D. Steen's Bayless Drug at 116 East Main, Hudson's Furniture at 713 West Main, because we'll keep on this program as long as you go to see them. You're doing it, let's keep on doing it. We'll see you next week at the same time.